So I do fancy as well. I fancy getting into maybe doing some extras work on film or something like that. Yeah, there's something I've thought about doing, and maybe we'll have a look. Apparently, she infamously put 2 different chemicals down one toilet, and it knocked her out. They found her on the floor in one of the toilets. This sort of camaraderie and the way things are done at the after meetings, there's a lot of similarities to rugby, and they really do seem to fit hand in hand.
Welcome to the second episode of The Man Behind the Mason, where I sit down with Richard Blacker, a true Bristolian, family man, rugby fan, and a genuinely great bloke. But before I introduce you, I have a quick favour to ask. Episode 1 was so much more successful than I thought it would be. In the first week, it was watched by over 200 people and received over 20 hours of watch time, but 80% of viewers had not subscribed to the channel. I'd love to get that down to something like 50%. So if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Those 2 small steps will help the channel more than you could know. Thank you for watching, and without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Richard, Rich, or just Ref. The point of this originally was going to be to interview people that I didn't know, on the basis that there's hundreds and hundreds of people down there that people don't just know. But actually talking to a few people that I'd like to interview, I realised that you actually don't really know anyone. You only know them in the context that you've met them down here.
Funnily enough, yeah, that was, are we filming?
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, right. Yes, when I was the master that initiated Pastor raised me, and he actually put me into the chair as well. I can remember saying to him, "You know everyone. When you come in the bar, everyone says hello and this." I said, "I know the people in our lodge," and he just laughed, and he said, "You will understand one day." And when I went into the chair in 2015, sort of 6 months, 9 months later, everybody's walking into the bar going, "Hello, Rich. Hello, Rich."
Yeah.
And he came up to me and he said, "Told you." And it is funny that when you go in the chair and then you start getting into other degrees and orders, all of a sudden you know loads and loads of people. But before, when you are a Master Mason, you know no one, and you do feel a little bit like, I'm down in this club and nobody knows me. But
even when you go through the chair, just the sheer fact that you've been visiting other lodges, even if you haven't personally met a lot of the people in that lodge, they'll still say hello to you and catch your eye and smile. And I think when I first went in the chair, which is probably when I first met you, really, because I think you were 2015.
Yeah, that's right.
Came out 2016, and I went in 2017. Is that I just knew you as Ref. Because everyone called you Ref.
I know, that's right. And there's a funny story about that. I don't think we'll say it, does it?
No, all right then. So, you're Bristol born?
I am, yes.
I guess that.
Yeah, I haven't got an accent, but I'm working on it. I was born in South Bristol, so I was born in born in Southmead Hospital, like the majority of people in Bristol. But I was brought up in Knoll Park, which is just off of Broad Walk. And I lived there all my young life, until I had my own house. But my father passed away a couple of years ago, and the house is just gone, and it was in our family for 62 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was a little bit of emotion. Actually, I drive up that street every now and then, and it's no longer in our family. But yeah, so all my life, and went to school. So I went to Knoll Park, infants and junior school, and then went to Hengrove. Great childhood.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, it was great place to be brought up, because a lot of amenities around, lots of playing fields, and of course I was.
Is that 70s?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I was born sort of mid-60s, 64. So yeah, by the time I was sort of growing up and at school and everything, it was in the 70s. We were allowed to go out on our own, drink water out of a tap, all those sort of things. nobody's allowed to do anymore.
Until you heard someone shouting for you to get back in.
That's right. Well, yeah, I mean, you knew when it was time to go in because it started getting dusk, didn't it? And yeah, it was a great time. And I had great parents who, loving parents. And yeah, I had two brothers, so I always had companions, even if it was raining and we weren't allowed out. Yeah, so.
Were you the youngest?
I was the oldest.
Right.
Yeah, which is sometimes it can be difficult because you've got to pave the way for others following you. Yeah. So yeah, you push the boundaries to see how far you can go. So yeah, I was the one who sort of took one for the team, let's say.
And after school, what did you go on to do?
Well, so
straight to work, or
I did. So I left school in 1980, and late 70s, early 80s. As you can imagine, they were sort of strange times. There was
I have to imagine.
Yeah, a lot of political and economic difficulties, really. You know, there was over 10% unemployment, and the majority of that was young people as well. So what am I going to do? I don't know what to do. And my dad just said, a mechanic, that's a good job. People always need their cars fixed. And I just went, that's a good idea.
So you were aware of the rate of unemployment and the lack of opportunities.
Well, UB40 told me all about it.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. I mean, the music scene, because I was really into music. There was punk, and then there was all the ska and all.
Mod or rocker?
Me, I was a punk in very, very early years, and then I was a mod for a bit. So, all that was going on, and so I went, started writing letters, and eventually I got accepted to be an apprentice in a local garage down in Bristolian. Did my apprenticeship. Wasn't really sure if it was for me though. Back in those days as well, the apprenticeship finished. They couldn't afford to keep me and give me a full man's wage. It was sort of not cheap labour, but
No, I have friends that even in the early 90s were taking on YTS for being a mechanic, and it was literally a known thing that it was almost before your 2 years it was up, they got rid of you, because if you hit the 2 years in the 90s, you had rights.
Yeah.
So
well, that's right. Yeah. So I'm now unemployed. What am I going to do?
How old?
I was then 20. So a friend of mine, I went round his house, and his dad was a warehouse manager in Berger Paints, which was a local company. And he said, well, why don't you come and work there? And, I can get you a job. Worked there for a little while. Got made redundant, looking for another job, and managed to get a job in a printing company down in Polton, which I absolutely loved. Best job I've ever had. It was really, really good.
Is that a completely new set of skills then?
That was different again, yeah. I've always sort of tried my hand at different things and whatever I needed to do. And I was always never really sure, what did I really want to do? And then got made redundant again. It was like I said, back in the 80s and 90s, lots of companies shutting down or companies having to reduce their staff. And then a friend's dad sort of rang me up. He said, there's this new factory down in Portbury Docks, and they're making plasterboard. He said, they're always after people. So I looked them up in the phone book, as you did back in those days.
I'm already impressed you were writing letters to get a job.
Well, you never, I'll try my hand at anything, John, And so I got this job, and funnily enough, the person who gave me the job, some years later, was my proposer into Masonry. But that goes on. And I can remember going to this, started this job, and it was on the 2nd of March, because it was my mum's birthday, 1992. And I walked out on the first day, and I said, not going to be here long. And that was just over 31 years ago. But I've done all sorts. I've been in management, in production management. I've done all sorts of things, and I sort of fell into training and organising training, designing training, delivering training, and so that's where I'm at now. And now I'm sort of starting to plan my exit over the next few years, but to start sort of living it easy, really. But that's what I'm hoping, or that's the plan anyway. We'll see what happens.
And have you noticed a lot of change then since starting there? Not in the company itself, but in the way that people come into companies and the expectations they have, and how much they're prepared to do. And
the big thing now that I've noticed is, because I say, so I've always seemed to be going to a different job when there's been a recession. Because I've always been the victim of a recession and everything. And then I've always felt lucky to get another job. And it was always, you jump through hoops just to get work. Now it's exactly the opposite. People they almost go, oh, I don't know if I can be bothered to do that. And to actually find people and good people that want to stay, really, really difficult. It's a completely different world. It's now the employee it's his marketplace, and he decides where he wants to go. Whereas in the past, it was sort of, you went where you could get, really. Unless you had something, some skill that was really, really special. But it's a really, really different world and now you have to really make sure you're looking after people, and everything's now it's a better thing, really. People are looked after better, and health and safety especially, because I deal a lot in health and safety, helping that department and delivering training, and we really, really have changed. And if you do work in sort of heavy industry, which I do, even though I am just office based, really, I still have to go out into the plant, and people are really protected in the workplace now. In fact, without getting into statistics of that, but you've got 20 times more chance of having a fatality doing something outside of the workplace in heavy industry than you have in there. Where you're in with, you're really dealing with some big risks. Because everything is well protected now.
I find it interesting, all of that. I'm fascinated with how quickly, over even just the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, the whole mentality of work has changed. And
definitely.
And it's great that the workplace is safer, and it's great that even mental health has come into the workplace now, and that's a consideration for people, because it's obviously a big problem in society for a number of reasons. But I can't help but think how people 17, 18, 19 today would have coped even back in 1995, because it just wasn't the same.
It's funny you should say that, because I have 4 apprentices who are between 17 and 19 report to me, and really I do have to sort of mother them almost, and you've got to do everything for them.
I can imagine you're a good mother.
I'd make somebody a lovely wife. But whereas when you were an apprentice, 40, 50 years ago, goodness knows what it was before. I mean, some of the things that used to go on, I mean, it was outright bullying, really, and really, really dodgy. We were talking about it with some of the engineers the other day about some of the things you'd have to do just to get through your first year.
Well, I suppose at some point it was like a picture of New York, wasn't it, with the workmen sat on their packed lunch boxes.
It would be nothing for people to be handcuffed to a bench for the best part of the day or something like that. People think it's really funny. But now you'd probably end up in prison.
Does that not happen anymore?
Unfortunately not.
I'd be no good working for somebody now then. That was all my fun, things like that. So at what point, how old were you when you were introduced to Masonry? Then you said somebody you worked with introduced you.
Yeah, well, the whole me being interested in Masonry is a really long story that goes back into my childhood. So it's a story I tell a lot of people. And one of the things in the school holidays, my mum would either send me and I'd take my 2 brothers to the Gaiety Cinema, which was an old local cinema. You know,
Right.
just a one screen, lovely, lovely place to watch a film. Or sometimes she would even take us. And this one holiday, it was the Easter holiday, and I said, "Oh, what's this film we're going to see?" She said, "I've no idea, but it's called The Man That Would Be King." I'm like, "Okay." And I'm watching it, and I'm thinking, this isn't a normal thing we'd watch on an Easter holiday. Normally, it's like a Disney film, or or Herbie Goes Bananas, that sort of thing. And I don't know if you've watched the film
I don't
or
think
read
I
the
have.
book, but I think, what's his name? Christopher Plummer, I think. He portrays Rudyard Kipling, and it is a book written by Rudyard Kipling. And it involves, I suppose it is Sean Connery and Michael Caine. And it's in India, sort of around Victorian times. And they are Masons. And they keep going on about it. And you see the square and compasses on his watch fob. And I said to my mum, I said, "What are these Masons?" And she said, "Well," and she sort of gave me some explanation. And from that day, I said, "I want to be a Mason." Didn't really know what it was, but I want to be a Mason. And it was always something in the back of my head. And I said that the person that employed me, he promoted me, and he was the manager, the area manager, and I was his supervisor. And we shared an office, and I picked up this message on his answer phone about, "Oh, I won't be able to get to your ceremony this evening. I'm sorry." So I thought, he's a Mason. But I didn't say anything. And then a few years later, head office is only like a few hundred meters down the road, and I bumped into him because he was working part-time now. And he said, "Oh, I'm going to London tomorrow." And I just went, "Are you going to Grand Lodge?" And he was taken back, you see. And he said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Oh."
So you knew all about Grand Lodge and...
I'd heard the name,
Right.
and I'd heard Grand Master, but I didn't know that much because I didn't want to spoil anything in case I wanted to. And I can remember as well walking past this building, and I will get back to this story. And I said to my wife, "What's that building there?" And she said, "Oh, that's the Masons' Hall." And I don't know why. And when I'm a Mason, that's the place I want to go to. So it is strange. You know, I'm a great believer in fate.
Yeah.
And so I said to the person in question, "Oh, where'd you do that?" He said, "In Park Street." I went, "Oh." I said, "Yeah, I've always fancied masonry." And he went, "Really? Right. What's your date of birth?"
Knowing what you know now.
And he went, "Right." He said, "I'll see what we can do." And yeah, I mean, that was sort of the way I've got into it, but I'd always had an interest. And funnily enough, because people have said to me in the past, "Any members of your family Masons?" And I said, "No." I said, "But my mum's mum, my grandmother, she was a cleaner in Park Street." so yeah, back in the early 70s or mid 70s, yeah, my grandmother used to clean here. And,
Wow.
Apparently she infamously put 2 different chemicals down one toilet, and it knocked her out. They found her on the floor in one of the toilets, and very often I often wonder which one is it.
Yeah. Big difference, I suppose, between masonry when you watch that film and today.
Definitely. And I suppose the difference now is the openness. Because I can remember my grandmother saying that it was one of the local vicars, and she knew them, and she saw him down there and said, "Oh, what are you doing down there?" And I can remember this conversation, because certain things stick in your mind, for all your life. And he said, "Oh, these are good people, Mrs. Britton. These are good
Did he?
people." So he was obviously one of our brethren.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I suppose back in the 70s, it was probably, not more difficult to get in, but it was how can you get in, because then it would have been only done by word of mouth only and recommendation, whereas now obviously we've got you can go online and
you can apply online,
apply
yeah, come to an open
find out,
evening,
yeah.
or
Which is it's not a bad thing at all.
No.
It's
no, I mean there's some great people I talk to all the time that wouldn't have become a Mason if it wasn't for the fact that they saw, you know, a stand somewhere, or saw that they could just apply or inquire. You know, there's still that perception that you have to know somebody and you have to be approached, but it's really not the case anymore.
No.
So how long ago was that you?
So I joined in 2009.
Right.
Yeah. So it was Friday the 13th.
Oh.
Friday the 13th in my Masonic career actually has been quite a big thing. I've been installed twice on Friday the 13th, and I was initiated and passed on Friday the 13th. And since being a man, because I'm master of my lodge at the moment for the third time, and I think I've done 6 ceremonies on Friday the 13th. So it's quite a big date in my Masonic career, Friday the 13th.
So outside of Masonry, apart from work, it sounds like you're slowly shutting down on that.
Yeah, like a lot of people now. Yeah.
What else do you get up to?
Me? Well, my other two loves are Spain and rugby.
Spain in general? Just the country, or going there?
It started that way. I used to go on holiday there a lot. When I first met my wife, we both said that we'd love to own a property in Spain, which we do now. For the last 20 years, we've had just a small place, and we go there as often as we can. And the plan is within the next couple of years to spend a lot more time there. I would love the culture, the food, everything about it.
You got any form of residency? Did you manage to get in?
No, because I didn't want it yet. Because of sort of grandchildren and family, my wife's not 100% sure about living full time, so we will probably be, flitting backwards and forwards. So we don't need to do that. But I've met a lot of Masons over there, and when I'm there, I do go to meetings.
Do you?
Yeah, there is in our village there is a temple which is mainly British Masons, but there are all nations, but it's predominantly British. And yeah, it's a great time when I go there. In fact, the first time I did go there, there was about half a dozen guys. Well, it might have actually been more than that, and they were all from St. Christopher's Lodge in Downend. And one guy, I said, "Well, I sat next to you a couple of weeks ago."
Those
said,
Gloucestershire
"Yes."
Masons get everywhere, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, because we had a little bit. They were saying, "Oh, we're Bristol Masons," and I kept saying, "They're not. They're not. They're just from Bristol."
Do they wear suits over there?
They do wear suits. Yeah.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and they've visited a couple of lodges, I think Florida way, and they've said that somebody from New York came to this Florida lodge in their suit and was absolutely disgusted that all of the guys from Florida were there in shorts and t-shirts.
I've heard of that in parts of the States. Yeah. But no, the main difference is, whereas our apron flap, is pointed, theirs is round. They do emulation. But it's quite interesting. The Grand Lodge of Spain is in its own entity, and I'm not sure about chapter, but everything else they practice all is affiliated to Mark Mason's Hall in London. So so if you do any other degrees, they are all under the
British kind of English
Constitution,
side of things.
Whichever it is, whether it be Mark or Knights Templar Priest or whatever.
Yeah. And your other love, apart from Spain?
Rugby. Absolutely. Yeah. I was a late developer when it came to playing sports. Always fancied it, didn't really ever get around to it. And around about the age of 24, I started playing, even though I'd always had an interest in it. And I only stopped playing a few years ago. I was 54.
Yeah.
The only reason I stopped playing is our third team disbanded, and I had a few games in the seconds, and they're all sort of 6'5". They're 18 stone but really lean, muscly. I couldn't catch them. It was just not fun. So, but my son plays at quite a high standard. So my Saturdays are usually I'll go right down to the bottom of Cornwall, right to the top of Gloucester, watching him along with my wife. But I've been a coach, a referee. My kids have all played. A couple of grandkids have played. I've refereed, coached. Yeah, I love it.
Is that why you recall breath?
No.
No. Another story, I guess.
That is another story.
All right.
That's for another time.
All right.
But yeah, so, and it really, really dawned on me because when I first came into Masonry, this sort of camaraderie and the way things are done at the after meetings, there's a lot of similarities to rugby, and they really do seem to fit hand in hand. I mean, my lodge is especially a lot of rugby players, and it just, I don't know what it is, it just seems to be something that fits in well, but yeah, really.
Yeah, there is a bit of a fraternity kind of feel with with rugby clubs, I guess, isn't there? And I suppose, is what any membership organisation to a certain extent. The only difference with Masonry and rugby and maybe some others is the common interest. Most people down here in Park Street, you may have completely different lives, but there's kind of a common theme or a common type of person that seems to be attracted to it. And obviously with rugby, it's alcoholics.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's rugby compared to other sports. There's a lot of principles. And it's about respect, and that sort of thing. So they really do seem to be similar, but completely different. And I suppose the big difference is the songs we sing at our after meetings. You could sing in front of your family.
You could probably tell them more about the stories of Masonry as well than you could the stories of rugby.
Yeah, I think we need to probably curtail it there a little bit. But,
so you're heavily involved in the club, the rugby club?
Yeah, I'm still the secretary of my club, St. Bernadette's. I've been secretary for about 8-9 years, but I think I've done my stint on that. I think it's time to hang my pen up. But yeah, I'm still involved. But and then with my son's club, I go down. I mean, he's 31, so it's not
right.
Children's rugby. But I do get a little bit involved. And sometimes on a Saturday, you go down to Chew Valley Rugby Club, and it is almost like a Bristol Masonic meeting. There are a lot of well-known faces from this building.
Are there?
And they're watching, or their sons play, or they live in the area. Yeah, it's very good.
Nice. So what's next for you? What's your kind of your future goals, or have you got any plans apart from cutting down on work and convincing your wife to move to Spain?
Well, I mean, for me, I think the next step is to go to. I'm going to go part-time for a little bit before I retire, and sort of enjoy my life a little bit.
Is there anything new you want to do, or do you think when you cut down on your hours? Loads of people say that the moment they retire, they don't know how they had the time to work.
Yeah.
Are you gonna pre-plan what you'll fill your time up with, or are you just gonna?
There's a lot of things in Masonry anyway that I do and will still fill my time. In fact, it'll probably give me time to do them more thorough rather than
rush it
through. And so I do fancy as well. I fancy getting into maybe doing some extras work on
Yeah.
film or something like that. Yeah, there's something I've thought about doing, and maybe we'll have a look. It's
What sort of role would you, if you were an actor? I'm not going to ask you which actor you would be, but what sort of role would you want?
I'd have to be, surely, I look like Vin Diesel?
Wow.
I can see me being action or
Action.
a good, or a cop, got me, and
Yeah.
detective. Yeah, I think that's me.
Go, Jack.
Who loves you?
Well, thanks for doing this, Rich. I've
It's been my
certainly learned a
pleasure.
lot about you now, and I hope everyone else has.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Cheers.